Hey folks, so I have pretty much compiled all of my 12th gen Cinebench R23 benchmarks. These were done with basically default settings, but with power limit set to unlimited. Now, one thing might make this nicer in the future if I go back and I list out what CPU cooler I used, maybe even the max temp that I hit. You'll notice if the score's in red, it thermal throttled, and plenty of those with the 13 Gen i7s and i9s on this list. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, we don't have an i9 13900KS on here, and I'm not actually planning to buy that unless, at some point they become a lot cheaper. But my best CPU, i9 13900KF. You can see we use the Gigabyte UD Z790, 32 gigs of RAM, 5200 megahertz D5. I actually have 6000 megahertz, so maybe one day we'll go back and do that. But we ended up getting a score of 40,114. Now, these scores, range from 38 to low 40s. With an overclock, 40, over 41,000. I may have even hit 42. Can't remember offhand, but I think that's right around what most people are getting, 39, 40. I don't think with default settings people are getting much higher than that, and that obviously makes that the king of this list, right? So one that I'd like to get that's a wee bit overpriced at the moment, the i9 13900F. If that thing drops, to around $400, maybe I'll get it. But you can see approximate score, is probably around 32,000, which makes that pretty awesome CPU considering it's a lock CPU. I do have the i9 12900KS. Have not released the unboxing video and haven't done really anything with that yet, but those videos to come, and at some point we'll update this video. But approximately, that should hit 29,000 from what I saw. That puts it, right there where the i7 13700KF is. Now, this is an interesting CPU because, God, this thing, I went from the i5 13600KF to this thing, and it was really hard to control the temps. You see in red there, it thermal throttled. I don't know if we would have got much of a higher score out of it. You see the score below it, which is in a better motherboard, and that scores less. Now, if I still had that CPU, we would run it again. Probably use the 280 millimeter AIO ID cooling or the 420 Arctic liquid freezer that I have. Right, that one will definitely keep that CPU cool. And we, who knows what we would have got for a score? Maybe we would have got to 30,000. I don't know. Underneath that though, i9 12900KF. I actually just recently got this, tried it out with two different RAM speeds, got 27,000. I don't know offhand, never bothered to look if that's a good score for it. But, realistically, that puts it underneath the i7 13700KF. So if you're out there shopping, folks, the i7 13700KF is most likely the way to go for gaming. And obviously for benchmarks, it would be better. However, it does get pretty hot, so expect to spend a ton of money on a CPU cooler for it. On this i9 12900KF, I actually only have Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120, which is dual tower, dual CPU fans, and it has kept the CPU pretty cool. Now, I would expect some slight overclocks I could do with that. That CPU cooler was not enough for the i7 13700KF. So, all right, next on the list, i5 13600KF. that score, kind of amazing. It ended up right at 25,000, right? But you can see we use D5 RAM. I still have this CPU. Maybe one day I'll put the 6,000 megahertz RAM in there, see if we can do better. On my wish list, the i7-13700F, another CPU currently overpriced, as you can get the i7-13700KF for the same price. And I actually got my i9-12900KF and KS for cheaper than you can get the i7-13700F. Next on my list, another run with the i5-13600KF. This was in a motherboard I've only had 2 weeks, the Aris Elite AX B760M, 32 gigs of RAM, 5200 megahertz. Whatever reason, only scored 23826. And then the once again using that same CPU, but even would be, in my opinion, a crappy motherboard. Gigabyte B660M DS3H, 23710. Now, jumping over to the right column, I no longer have this CPU, but the i9-12900. You see its scores. Could have scored better with some higher RAM. I'm sure it could have, but that's what we got. I sold that RAM or that CPU for the same price as what I got the i9-12900KS in. But that was just, there's some good deals out there, and I was able to get lucky when I sold mine. i5-12600K. Now the scores are really dropping here, right? Most likely this is the ASRock Z690 with some D4 RAM in it. 15,955. And coming in relatively the same price point, the i5-13400F, 15,859. And probably in the same price these days as well, the i7-12700F. I believe this was also on that ASRock Z690, 14,104. So between those three CPUs, the 12700F, 13400F, and the 12600K, I would think the 12600K is probably the best deal right now, folks. Now, dropping further in score, the i5-12400F. I don't have that one anymore. Could it have done better with the D5 motherboard? I'm sure it could have. I will never know, but that's what the score was. And another recent purchase, only about 2 to 3 weeks old, the i3-13100F. You can see that it barely scored better, folks, than the i3-12100F. And when I tried to compare it in Fortnite, surprisingly, didn't really notice much of a difference. And I really didn't notice much difference in a World War Z benchmark either. I think actually the 12100F did better. So is the 13100F worth the money? It's questionable. Now, at the very bottom of this, you got the G7400 Pentium, which is, absolutely terrible score, and then the G690 6900. Neither one of these are worth crap for gaming, and I wouldn't recommend either of those two. Anything above it though, wow, you can make these definitely work for gaming. It just matters what you are, what resolution do you want to run, what quality. Otherwise, you could be happy with any of the CPUs from the i3-12100F up. Thanks for checking out the video, folks. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.